My daughter didn't just laugh. She cut me open with it. Dad, Elise said. Knife sawing the turkey too hard, tearing skin with each stroke. Those canvases aren't set even worth firewood. The room froze. Anna, my sister, went still with the gravy boat mid-air. Marcus, my son-in-law, adjusted his tie as though money could be hidden in the knot. Daniel, my boy, balanced the dinner plates like he'd stumbled into a courtroom. The furnace clicked, the house held its breath, and in my pocket I felt the folded paper I'd been carrying all afternoon, proof she had no idea what she was mocking. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you are listening from. Thanksgiving, November 24th, 2022. Elmhurst, Illinois. Outside, the oak leaves rattled in the streetlight wind. Inside, the house smelled like sage, butter, and the faint sweetness of polish that never leaves old wood. Elise was 27 now, eyeliner sharp, marriage ring glinting, and yet when she lifted her chin at me, I saw every grudge she'd been waiting years to unwrap. So she pressed, voice light but eyes mean, still wasting nights in that garage, still pouring money into paint no one wants. I slid the folded paper onto the tablecloth, right beside the cranberries. It costs more than it used to, I said. Marcus pounced first, as though bills were oxygen. He read aloud Blick Art Materials. Invoice E11,246. November 22nd, 2022. Total $2,800. His eyebrows climbed. Elise's laugh was louder this time, sharper. 2,800? That's sisters our mortgage, Dad? Gone unpaint. Tell me, do you burn it for heat? The invoice sat there like a confession. Cobalt, ultramarine. 2 gallons of mineral spirits, brushes with hog bristle heads. Every item spelled out in black print. I took it back, slid it beneath my glass, and anchored it with water. This it's mine to pay, I said. Mom Sip's house isn't set yours alone. Elise shot back. The air dropped a degree. You chose canvases over her when she was alive. And now, you set her choosing them over me. That last sentence wasn't just cruel. It was a blade twisted in old grief. Anna's throat cleared, her way of laying a plank across boiling water. Dinner's getting cold, she said. We filled plates, though appetite was gone. Marcus talked too loudly about football. Elise snapped a photo of the invoice with the casual stealth of someone stealing. I pretended not to notice, but inside I marked it down, part of the ledger I keep without ink. Later, Daniel pulled me aside by the sink. His voice was quiet, carrying 17 years of careful watching. Dad, why do you always paint at night? Because night is when your mother still speaks to me. Because grief feels less cruel in darkness. Because canvases look like doors, and some nights I need to step through. Quieter, I told him. No distractions, no compressors from the shop, just quiet. He nodded, but his eyes locked on the paint smudges clinging stubbornly to my knuckles. He notices everything. I curled my fingers into a fist and wiped them on a dish towel, as if silence could erase truth. When dessert came, Elise softened her tone, but not her aim. I just mean, she said, wrapping her hands around coffee. Marcus and I are drowning, and you's throwing money at fantasies. Can sit you see? Her husband forced a laugh. If the light changes before the 15th, he said, that said it'd be great. I looked at Elise and wanted her to see the child she used to be, 9 years old in a yellow dress, standing on a crate in my workshop, begging me to paint her with her hair down, because princesses don't wear ponytails. That portrait still hangs in my garage, framed cheap, dust thick over her smile. She once called my blue paint magic. Now she calls it firewood. Some paintings, I told her, voice steady, only make sense when the light changes. She rolled her eyes. Always riddles. And maybe she was right. But some truths are too dangerous to hand over plain. That night, after they left with foil-wrapped leftovers and brittle goodbyes, I stood in the garage. The portrait looked down at me through its veil of dust. I brushed it clean with my thumb and whispered, "Yes, you still look like a princess." Upstairs, Daniel slept. Across town, Elise scrolled through her phone, zooming in on numbers she thought she understood. And I, alone with my brushes, felt the ache of a father mocked by the child who once begged him to paint her forever. I locked the front door, placed the invoice into my drawer with the spare keys, and whispered into the dark what she could not yet hear. It's not worthless, it's priceless. And one day, when the light changes, you'll know. When the house went silent after Thanksgiving, I sat in my workshop with only the smell of turpentine for company. The garage clock ticked loud enough to feel like a metronome inside my skull. Elise's words, worthless, firewood, choosing paint over her, clung to the walls louder than the furnace ever could. On the bench beside me was a slip of paper I almost tore into confetti. A Sotheby's auction slip. Lot hash 4421, untitled by Corvus. Hammer price $699,842. Sold October 19, 2022. Buyer anonymous, wired through Zurich. The auction house had couriered me the statement, neat as a death certificate. My fingers bent the paper until the fold looked like a scar. I could have ripped it, erased proof that what Elise mocked had already built the kind of fortune she dreamed about. But then her voice echoed again. You chose canvases over Mom. You're still choosing them over me. I dropped the slip, face down. On the easel leaned a half-finished canvas. A man split in two, one half shadow, one half light. I hadn't touched it in weeks. The eyes stared at me, accusing that painting had started as therapy after my wife's funeral. But tonight it looked like judgment. Anna came by with pie wrapped in foil. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching me finger the edges of the slip like it was a razor. Victor, she said, soft as gauze, don't let her words rot you. That girl doesn't know what she's trampling. You carried yourself through your wife's death with these paintings. You kept breathing because of them. I wanted to believe her. But my daughter's contempt cut deeper than grief ever did, because grief is honest. It's loss. Elise's words, they were betrayal, disguised as logic. Later that night, I went to lock up and heard voices bleating down the hall. Elise in the guest room, her tone hushed but sharp. If he sold the house and all that junk, we sit be out of debt tomorrow. Marcus Sifseth's reply was low, practical, heartless. He once set matter much longer. It bests our name on the mortgage. He says just dead weight. Dead weight. From the mouth of a man who still uses my tools in the garage, I stepped back before the floor could betray me. My heart pounded, every beat painting another line of fury. In that moment, I didn't think of millions. I didn't think of Zurich or Sotheby's or Corvus. I thought only of Elise at 9 years old in that yellow dress, smiling at her portrait. And now 27, conspiring against me in the next room. The pie Anna brought went untouched. I left it on the counter. The slip stayed on the workbench all night. Sometimes I picked it up, sometimes I nearly tore it. By dawn I pressed it flat, slid it into a manila folder marked gallery correspondence, and locked it in the trunk under the workbench, a trunk she didn't know existed. But the words stayed unlocked inside me, dead weight. I didn't sleep after hearing Marcus call me dead weight. The phrase burned all night, echoing between the rafters of my skull. By morning my hands shook with a mix of fury and clarity. It was time to open what I had kept closed for decades. The garage smelled like cold steel and drying paint. I pulled the workbench stool aside and knelt on the concrete floor. Buried under a tarp, behind a toolbox older than Elise, sat the trunk. Heavy oak, iron clasps, edges dulled with age, the kind of trunk you see in estate sales and wonder what secrets it kept through wars, weddings, funerals. My hands found the key where it always waited, taped beneath the drawer with masking tape yellowed by years. I peeled it free, the sound brittle as old skin. The lock turned with a tired click. Inside, the past breathed out. Layered carefully, wrapped in brown craft paper, were canvases, originals. Each signed with the name no one in this house had ever spoken aloud, Corvus. I pulled one free. A 2011 oil study of Lake Michigan at dawn. The brushwork whispered of grief, of silence, of a man trying to remember his wife's breathing. Auction records said $312,500. To me it was the smell of coffee on a cold pier and the echo of footsteps that would never come again. Anna came to the garage that afternoon, her scarf pulled tight against the Chicago wind. She stopped dead in the doorway when she saw the trunk open. The canvases spread across the bench like evidence. Victor, she whispered, stepping closer. She picked up the Lake Michigan canvas and flipped it, eyes widening at the bold signature. Corvus? My God, you scepter not forgotten, you scepter legendary. I pressed my finger to my lips. No one knows. Her eyes softened. You've been carrying this secret all these years? I gestured to the portrait of Elise on the pegboard wall. The dust across her painted eyes looked heavier today. Because I wanted to be her father, not a name she Googled. I wanted Daniel to see me as a man who fixed cars and paid bills, not a ghost in a gallery. This was mine. The only thing no one could take. Anna touched my arm, but now she sips trying to take it without even knowing it. I nodded. The irony was a weight. Elise thought she was mocking scraps of canvas, but she was trampling on gold she didn't even recognize. We spent an hour cataloging auction slips, gallery letters, bank transfers printed neatly on crisp paper, Zurich, New York, London. Each page went into manila folders marked by year, evidence, proof. Not for me, for the moment Elise would force my hand. But secrecy has a way of breathing louder when you least want it. That evening I caught Elise snooping in the garage. She said she was looking for aluminum foil. The roll sat plain as day on the pantry shelf inside. Her eyes swept the room, lingered on the workbench. The padlock on the trunk now sealed again. She smiled too quickly when I asked if she found what she needed. Marcus was worse. I spotted him a week later, phone angled in the dark, snapping photos of the garage shelves when he thought no one watched. He lingered by the pegboard where Elise's portrait hung. His camera caught the corner of a canvas under craft paper. My jaw tightened, but I said nothing. Sometimes silence is the sharper blade. Daniel noticed something neither of them cared to. One night he stood in the doorway, his backpack slung low, his eyes focused on my hands. You got paint on you again, he said, not accusing, not mocking, just observing. Even under your nails. You wash, but it doesn't come off. I looked down. Burnt umber streaked the cuticle of my thumb. A smear of titanium white ghosted the creases of my palm. He saw what Elise refused to. I like to keep busy, I told him. He frowned. Busy or hiding? The unfinished canvas loomed in the background, half shadow, half light, staring at me like it knew the answer. When Daniel finally turned and went upstairs, I felt the weight of two truths pressing in. My daughter was circling me like a vulture, and my son was circling me like a detective. One would betray me out of greed. The other would save me out of love if I gave him the chance. I locked the trunk again that night, sealing Corvus away. But for the first time in years, I didn't feel safe with it hidden. Elise's eyes, Marcus's phone, Daniel's questions, the storm was coming. The unfinished canvas seemed to wait, daring me to finish it, daring me to step into the light and reveal what I had tried so hard to bury. By the second week of December, the air in Elmhurst had sharpened into that brittle cold where breath feels like glass. Snow dusted the driveways. Christmas lights blinked in nervous patterns down the block, and inside my house, Elise's tension coiled tighter every day. I decided it was time to set the first trap. Not a snare of cruelty, but a breadcrumb, a test to measure just how far her greed would reach. On December 6th, I forgot something on the kitchen counter, a folded bank slip, real enough to sting, but not enough to ruin. Auction lot hash 4421. Sotheby's hammer price, $699,842. Clear black ink against white paper. I laid it beside the coffee pot and went to the garage, leaving the bait in plain sight like a hunter who knows the deer is already in the woods. I didn't wait long. Elise came by that afternoon under the excuse of picking up a box of ornaments. She carried herself with the casualness of a burglar rehearsing innocence. I watched from the hallway mirror as she paused by the counter, fingers brushing the paper. She unfolded it, eyes scanning the figure, mouth opening just slightly as if her lungs couldn't handle that many digits. Her phone came out before she even thought to breathe. A flashless photo. Then another. A second later, the slip was folded, smooth flat, and set back exactly as she'd found it, except her trembling hands gave her away. The crease was bent sharper than before. She didn't know I sent been watching. That night she snapped at Marcus during dinner. "Do you have any idea how much money he sits hiding?" she hissed, when she thought I couldn't adhere 700,000 on one painting. Marcus's voice dropped to a husky whisper. "Then find the rest." I stood in the hallway, coffee cooling in my hand, listening to the two of them plan their heist like amateurs who believed themselves professionals. Elise wanted numbers, Marcus wanted access. Both wanted me ignorant. They didn't realize ignorance can be a mask. The next day I made it harder for them. Elise tried to open the garage. She found the locks changed. I'd had them rekeyed that morning by a locksmith in Oak Brook. A crisp receipt for $147.60 tucked into my drawer, dated December 7th, 2022. Proof of a boundary she hadn't expected. "Why'd you change the locks?" she asked, feigning a light tone. "Old ones were sticking," I said, showing her the receipt like it was a grocery list. "Better safe than sorry." Her jaw tightened. "Safe from what?" I smiled the way a mechanic does when he knows a car has been misdiagnosed by someone else. "From mistakes." The silence between us weighed heavier than the snow outside. That evening I phoned Graham, my lawyer. His voice on the line was steady, clipped. The kind of man who knows courtrooms better than bedrooms. I explained everything, the auction slip, Elise's photo, Marcus's whispers. "You start laying groundwork," he said. "Good, don't confront, collect." "Collect what?" "Proof she said'll cross the line you sev drawn. Because she will. Greed doesn't stop at the first dollar. It starves until it devours everything." I hung up with a plan forming sharper in my mind. Yet, as much as I was plotting, I wasn't blind to my own doubts. Lying awake that night, the slip of $699,842 burned behind my eyelids. Elise's little girl portrait stared from the garage wall, dust on her eyes, reminding me of innocence that used to exist. Was I baiting my own daughter into a fall she couldn't recover from? Or was I finally forcing her to see a truth she refused to face? The questions gnawed, but I knew the answer lay not in cruelty but in justice. By December 9th, the whispers grew bolder. I caught Marcus on the porch making a call he thought private. "She's got proof, Elise. I saw it myself. We can leverage this, force him to sell, cover the mortgage." Don said, "Lose your nerve. Force him to sell. Cover the mortgage." My son-in-law's voice carried like a death sentence across the frosted window pane. Inside, Daniel noticed more than I wanted. He saw me pacing the kitchen, the coffee untouched, the folded slip resting on the counter again. "Dad," he said, eyes narrowing, "you see it, different, like you see it, waiting for something." I pressed a hand to his shoulder. "Sometimes you have to let people reveal who they are." He frowned, not understanding but sensing more than I wanted him to. His innocence was my last anchor to decency, and yet I knew the storm would sweep him into it before long. The unfinished canvas in the garage seemed to mock me. The man half shadow, half light, a mirror of who I was becoming. Father, painter, schemer. Am I cruel, or am I finally showing her the truth she refuses to see? I stared at the painting until the lines blurred. Then I whispered into the cold garage air. "Light will change, and when it does, the painting will speak." By mid-December, the snow in Elmhurst had crusted into gray slabs along the sidewalks, the kind of snow that doesn't sparkle anymore. It just lingers, waiting for a thaw. That was how Elise and Marcus looked to me now. Not dazzling, not hiding, just lingering in the corners of my house with greed thick on their breath. I decided it was time for the second trap. This one sharper, crueler in its precision. On December 12th, I drafted a letter. Not a real one. A forgery I designed on my old typewriter, the same machine I used to write love notes to my wife when she was alive. I loaded a yellowed sheet of bond paper and began to type. "This letter certifies the estimated valuation of the enclosed oil canvas at $50,000, $50,000. Prepared December 11th, 2022. Signed Andrew LeClaire, independent appraiser." A fake name, a fake appraisal, a fake valuation, just bait fattened for hungry eyes. I slid the page into a cream envelope, hand addressed in blue ink, and left it protruding from a stack of unopened mail on the kitchen counter. It didn't take a detective to guess what would happen. That evening, Elise came over under the guise of returning a casserole dish. She barely set it down before her hand brushed the envelope. She paused, eyes flicking to see if anyone noticed. Then she slipped the letter free and read it. Her lips parted when she saw the bold figure $50,000. 50,000, she muttered, almost too low to catch. Her phone came out faster than reflex, and the camera snapped once, twice. But this time she didn't stop at photographing. When she thought no one was looking, Elise folded the letter cleanly, tucked it into her purse, and pressed her lips together in triumph. I stood in the hallway shadows, watching. My chest hurt with the kind of ache only betrayal can sharpen. The daughter who once begged me to paint her as a princess now stole scraps from her father's table. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I phoned Graham that night. She took the bait, I said, my voice steady though my hands shook. Good, he answered. We still need proof she intends to use it. That seps when her greed overplays its hand. Did she speak to Marcus about it? I will know by morning. And I did. Because on December 13th at exactly 9:42 p.m., Elise's voice carried through the thin plaster walls of the guest bedroom. I'd left my phone recording on the hallway table, a trick Graham had suggested, not planting bugs but simply letting their carelessness incriminate them. The audio was clear. Elise, this appraisal says 50,000. If he just sold one of these paintings, we could pay off the mortgage. We wouldn't have to keep waiting. Marcus, then we take it to someone who's still by. We don't ask. We don't wait. He sets too stubborn. We act before December 18th. December 18th. The bank's deadline. Their desperation had finally sharpened into crime. I stopped the recording and saved it to 2 devices, one on my phone, another on a flash drive Graham insisted I keep locked away. Then I moved quickly. The real paintings, the Corvus canvases worth millions, I wrapped in craft paper and bubble wrap, one by one, my hands reverent and trembling. Lake Michigan. Untitled Shadows. The diptych I painted the week my wife died. Each slid carefully into Anna's SUV under cover of night. By December 14th, they were stacked safely in her guest room, guarded by a sister who understood secrets better than anyone. Meanwhile, Elise strutted around the house as if she'd already won. She believed the $50,000 letter was her golden ticket. She didn't realize it was paper-thin bait, fragile enough to collapse under the weight of a courtroom. That night, as I returned from Anna's with the empty trunk, Daniel cornered me in the garage. His eyes darted to my paint-streaked nails, the stack of empty craft paper, the nervous tremor in my breath. Dad, he said, voice low, what's going on? You stir moving things, hiding things. This isn't just painting anymore. I held his gaze, searching for the right words. He was too young for the truth, too old for a lie. Sometimes, I said carefully, a man has to protect what sips his, even if it means letting people you love show you who they really are. He didn't look satisfied, but he nodded slowly. He turned to go, then paused. His eyes flicked to the unfinished canvas on the easel, the man half in shadow, half in light. That painting, he said softly. It looks like you. When he left, I stared at it until my vision blurred. Was I the shadow, or the light, or both? That night, lying awake, I heard Elise laugh in the next room. A laugh not of joy, but of victory. She thought she'd outplayed me. She thought she held the winning card. What she didn't know was that every step she took deeper into greed, I was there first, laying out the path, recording every footprint. Because revenge isn't striking once. Revenge is letting the hand overplay itself until justice reveals the trap. December in Illinois always feels like time is running out. The days are short, the nights endless, and every breath outside burns like frostbitten truth. By the week before Christmas, the air in our house carried the same pressure as the sky before a blizzard, heavy, waiting to break. The bank's deadline was set for December 18th. Elise and Marcus circled that date like vultures. It became their countdown, their mantra, the drumbeat beneath every whispered argument. On December 15th, I found Elise rifling through my desk. She thought I was asleep. Papers spread across the surface like a gambler's losing hand. Insurance statements, tax filings, receipts. She dug until her fingers landed on what I had left for her to find. A genuine slip from J.P. Morgan Chase. Date November 30th, 2022. Deposit confirmation $699,842. Wired from Sotheby's, Zurich. Real ink, real watermark, real numbers. Her breath caught when she saw it. Marcus, she hissed later that night, her voice carrying down the hallway thin as a knife. He has 700,000 just sitting there. Marcus Sispet's reply was sharp, urgent. Then we use it before the 18th. The bank one says wait. If he one says sell, we make him sell. The words chilled me more than the December air seeping through the window cracks. I recorded that conversation too, not with wires or gadgets, but with the simple honesty of my phone resting face down on the hall table. Their voices etched themselves into the device. Proof of intent, proof of conspiracy. On December 16th, I found something worse. Marcus sat at the dining room table with Elise, a stack of papers between them. He held a pen like a weapon, whispering, "If we can convince him, we forge it. One signature, Elise. His name, Victor Harlan. That SEP's all it takes." Her hands trembled. "That SIP's illegal." Marcus leaned in. "So is foreclosure. Do you want to lose everything? You think your father cares if the bank takes this house? He SEP's drowning in paintings, not in reality. We need that money." I stood in the doorway unseen, every muscle taut. My daughter hesitated. Her eyes darted to the bank slip, then to the pen in Marcus's hand. Fear flickered across her face. For the first time I saw the little girl she used to be. Scared, unsure, wanting her father's guidance. But greed was louder. Marcus pressed harder. "We sell, just make it easy," he whispered. "Sign his name, take the slip to the bank. Pay the mortgage before the 18th. He sell, thank us later." Elise pressed her fingers to her temples. "This is wrong. It's set survival," Marcus shot back. That single word, survival, was his excuse for everything. I stepped back into the shadows before they could see me. My chest ached, not from fear, but from the sight of Elise caught between temptation and terror. She was drowning, and Marcus was tying the weights tighter around her ankles. That night I documented everything. The forged letters she had stolen, the phone recordings. The real bank slip now photographed on Marcus's device. I made duplicates, USB drives tucked into Anna's purse, copies saved on Graham's secure cloud. Redundancy was my new religion. By December 17th, Elise was unraveling. She snapped at Marcus in the kitchen, slammed cabinets too hard, paced the floor like an addict waiting for a fix. Daniel noticed. He cornered me in the garage again, voice tense. "Dad, something is wrong with her. With both of them. They set desperate." "What ispit's going on?" I wiped paint from my hands. Payne's gray smudging across the towel like ash. The unfinished canvas loomed behind me. The man half shadow, half light. "Some people," I told him carefully, "mistake desperation for justification. They sit'll do anything to quiet the fear in their chest. Even betray their own blood." Daniel stared at me, eyes narrowing. "And you start just letting it happen?" I didn't answer. Silence was my shield, but his words pierced anyway. On December 18th, the morning of the deadline, Elise came into the kitchen pale as snow. Her hands shook as she poured coffee she didn't drink. Marcus hovered near her, his jaw clenched, eyes darting. They were a pair of cornered animals, snapping at air. "Dad," Elise finally said, her voice brittle, "you don't understand what it sets like to owe everything and have nothing, to wake up every day wondering if the house will be gone tomorrow." I met her eyes. "You think I don't know what it setup's like to lose a home? I lost one when your mother died. I lost everything." Her lips quivered, but Marcus cut in before compassion could break through. "We don't need philosophy," he spat. "We need a solution." His hand brushed his pocket where the bank slip peeked out like stolen treasure. I saw Elise's fear then. Real, trembling, raw. She wasn't just greedy, she was terrified. and Marcus had weaponized that terror into betrayal. I let them walk out the door with the slip in his pocket. Let them drive off into the December cold, thinking they were ahead, thinking they could forge, cheat, and steal their way out of drowning. But in reality, every step they took was another nail in their own coffin. That night, I returned to the garage. The unfinished canvas waited, silent witness to it all. I picked up the brush, dipped it in black, and traced a line across the figure's shadowed face, half in darkness, half in light. That was me. That was Elise. That was every choice we'd ever made. The furnace groaned. The house creaked, and I whispered into the paint fumes. You think survival is forgery. I think survival is truth. Let's see which one the world believes. December 22nd. 4 days before Christmas. Snow pressed against the windows, muffling the world outside. Inside, the dining room glowed with the soft hum of candles. The table dressed in green runners and polished silver. It should have been warm, festive, forgiving. Instead, it was a stage, and tonight I would turn it into my courtroom. Elise had insisted on a second holiday dinner to celebrate family sacrifices. That word, sacrifices, sat like a pit in my throat. She wanted gratitude for the storm she and Marcus had dragged into this house. Marcus arrived in a new wool coat he couldn't afford, his tie too bright, his grin stretched like brittle glass. Daniel set the plates, silent, his eyes shifting between us like a referee bracing for blood. Anna, loyal as ever, sat at my right, a steadying presence. I'd rehearsed this moment for weeks. Tonight wasn't about shouting, it was about unveiling layer by layer, until denial had nowhere left to hide. We began with turkey again, smaller this time, the bird resting awkwardly on the platter like it knew it wasn't set at the centerpiece. Elise poured wine with a smile that didn't set it touch her eyes. To family, she said, lifting her glass. To sacrifices we all make so we can move forward. Her words coiled. Marcus clinked his glass too loudly. Daniel didn't drink, just stared at me, as though he already sensed what I was about to do. I let the toast settle, then set my fork down gently, the sound sharp in the hush. Speaking of sacrifices, I said, there are some truths we've been avoiding. Tonight we'll still bring them into the light. Elise's smile stiffened. Dad, please, not at dinner. But I reached into my jacket and laid the first card on the table. The forged $50,000 appraisal letter, crisped paper, still folded the way she had stolen it. This, I said calmly, was taken from my house. Without my knowledge, without my permission. Elise's face drained. Marcus shifted in his chair, his hand twitching toward the paper as if he could snatch it back. It's a fake, I continued. I know because I created it. I left it where I knew it would be found. And you, Elise, you pocketed it like treasure. That's the first truth. Anna inhaled sharply. Daniel's fork paused mid-air. Elise opened her mouth, but no sound came. I reached for the second card, a folder of real auction receipts. I slid them across the table, one by one, the numbers glaring under the candlelight. $699,842, $312,500, $428,000. These, I said, are the real figures, the truth you dismissed as worthless firewood, paintings you mocked, Elise, paintings you tried to steal, worth millions. That's the second truth. Marcus muttered, this doesn't prove. I cut him off with the third card, glossy photographs of gallery openings. Crowds leaning toward canvases signed with a single name, Corvus. You called me a dreamer. You said I chose canvases over life. What you never knew, what none of you knew, is that for decades I sat painted under another name, Corvus, and the world knows him well. Elise Sispa's chair scraped against the hardwood as she lurched forward. No, you septured, lying. This isn't septured real. This isn't septured true. Her voice cracked, but the fear beneath it betrayed her. Daniel Sepp's eyes widened. He whispered it like a secret he was almost afraid to know. Dad, you said Corvus. I nodded once. Yes, son, that sips the third truth. The room pulsed with silence. Then came the fourth card. Graham Sepp's affidavits, notarized, stacked in crisp legal order. Mr. Graham has documented every step, every receipt, every deposit, every transfer. It Sepp's airtight. You cannot contest what is already protected. I let that sit before drawing the final nail. I pulled out my phone, tapped play, and set it on the table. Marcus Estes' voice spilled into the dining room. If we can convince him, we forge it. One signature, Elise. Victor Harlan. That's just all it takes. Then Elise's voice, this appraisal says 50,000. If he just sold one of these paintings, we could pay off the mortgage. The recording ended. The table was stone. Only the furnace hummed. Elise's hands trembled. She reached for Marcus, but he leaned back, his face pale, his cowardice shining in the candlelight. That Sepp's not me, he stammered weakly. That Sepp's taken out of context. Daniel Sepp's chair scraped back. He stared at Elise, disbelief written across his face. You were going to forge Dad Sepp's name? For money? Daniel, she began, her voice breaking. But he stood, fists clenched, shaking his head. All my life you said he cared more about paint than people. And now I find out you cared more about money than either of us. Elise's mouth opened, then closed. Her eyes darted between me, the papers, the recordings. For the first time in her life, my daughter had no words. Anna placed her hand over mine under the table, grounding me. Her eyes shimmered with pride, not pity. I looked at Elise, my voice calm but cutting. You mocked what you didn't understand. You tried to steal what you didn't under. You thought you were holding scraps, but you were trampling on a legacy worth millions. The only thing worthless here tonight is your loyalty. Her lips quivered, tears welled, but no defense came. The room was silent. Silent in that way only betrayal can demand. Even the candles flickered as though afraid to make a sound. Daniel finally whispered the question that hung heavy in the air. Dad, why didn't you tell us? I looked at him, my son, my anchor, the only one at this table whose gaze didn't cut me. Because I wanted you to know me as your father first, not a name in a gallery. I painted in silence, so you never doubt I was here for you. But tonight the silence ends. Elise slumped back in her chair. Her glass-tipped, wine-spilling red across the green runner bleeding like evidence into the fabric. She stared at it hollow, while Marcus stared at the door as though running might erase his guilt. But no one moved. Because the truth had landed and there was nowhere left to run. The morning after the showdown, the house felt hollow, as if the walls themselves were ashamed of what they had witnessed. The candles from the night before sat cold and bent, their wax frozen in ugly rivulets down the holders. The wine stain on the green runner looked darker now, like dried blood no one bothered to scrub. Elise was gone before dawn. I heard the front door creak open around 5 a.m., her hurried footsteps crunching snow as she fled to Marcus's car. No goodbye, no explanation, just the sound of a daughter running from the mirror I'd forced her to face. Anna found me in the kitchen, coffee already brewed, her scarf wrapped tight. She laid a hand on my shoulder and said, You did what had to be done. But the victory didn't feel like triumph. It felt like standing over ashes after a fire you started to keep warm. 2 days later, Elise came back, but not as my daughter. She came as an enemy with papers in hand. Graham called me the moment it landed. Your daughter has filed a contest against the trust. I closed my eyes. On what grounds? Financial misconduct. She claims you misrepresented assets. She wants the court to freeze accounts until the matter settled. It was the move of a desperate woman, reckless, flimsy, doomed, but it cut deeper than any courtroom could. My own flesh and blood dragging me into the open as if I were a criminal. By December 24th, the news had spread. Not to tabloids, not yet, but to Elise's workplace. She had slipped at a holiday party, venting to a colleague about millions locked up in paintings. Within days, HR summoned her. Accusation, misuse of financial information. By December 27th, she was placed on leave. By New Year's, she was fired. Financial misconduct, the company statement read. A mirror of what she had accused me of. Marcus lasted longer, but not by much. When the bank learned about the attempted forged signature, courtesy of Graham filing an injunction to block suspicious withdrawals, Marcus's name hit their internal watch list. His mortgage application for a refinance was denied. His employer caught wind. By mid-January, he was let go. Elise's marriage was cracking even faster than her finances. But what hurt most wasn't their downfall. It was Daniel's silence. On December 28th, he stood in the garage doorway, staring at me while I cleaned brushes with turpentine. The unfinished canvas loomed behind me, its face half in shadow, half in light. He didn't look at it. He looked at me. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, his voice steady, though his eyes glistened. I set the brush down, heart pounding. "Tell you what, son, that you were Corvus, that we weren't set broke, that you were carrying all of this alone while I thought you were just painting to survive grief." I wiped my hands on a rag, searching for words that wouldn't sound like excuses. "I painted at night so you sipped to see me as your father, not just a name in a magazine. I didn't sept want you to measure me by dollars or fame. I wanted you to measure me by how I showed up." He swallowed hard, his Adam Sips apple jerking. "But all this time, I thought Elise was right. I thought you chose paint over us." My chest tightened. "No, Daniel. I chose paint to survive losing your mother. Without it, there wouldn't have been any of me left for you." He looked at me, the weight of 17 years pressing down on his shoulders. Slowly he nodded. "Not forgiveness. Not yet, but the first brick of understanding laid between us." Meanwhile, Elise spiraled. Marcus abandoned her before January was out, slipping out one night with nothing but a duffel bag and a muttered excuse. She called me once on a Tuesday morning, voice ragged. "Dad, I didn't mean for it to go this far. Marcus pushed and I listened, silent." She sobbed into the phone. "I just wanted to feel like I wasn't set at drowning. I didn't mean to become this." My throat tightened, but my voice stayed calm. "Elise, greed burns hotter than hunger. Hunger ends when you eat. Greed ends when there sips nothing left to destroy. You destroyed yourself, not me." There was silence on the line, then a broken whisper. "I'm sorry." I closed my eyes. "I know." The call ended there. That night, I stood in the garage again. The unfinished canvas stared at me, daring me to choose shadow or light, despair or forgiveness. For the first time, I understood my revenge wasn't cruelty. It was clarity. I hadn't ruined Elise. I had simply let the truth burn until only the ashes of greed remained. And in those ashes, maybe, just maybe, she'd find a way to start again. January in Chicago means wind that slices through bone. The courthouse on Washington Street rose out of the frozen air like a fortress, gray stone against a sky the color of lead. On January 12th, 2023, that building became the stage where my daughter tried to turn me into a villain. The corridors buzzed with footsteps, papers, murmured arguments. My shoes echoed off marble floors as Anna walked beside me, her hand brushing mine like an anchor. Graham, steady in his dark overcoat, carried two thick binders under one arm, every receipt, every affidavit, every recording. Daniel trailed behind, his face pale, his jaw set. He hadn't spoken much since Christmas, but his eyes never left me. Inside the courtroom, the heat was stifling. Elise sat at the petitioner's table, hair neat, suit borrowed, eyes rimmed red. She looked older than 27, older than me in some ways. Marcus was nowhere to be seen. His absence was louder than any gavel. She kept glancing at the door, hoping maybe that her husband would stride in to defend her. But he didn't. He never would. When the judge entered, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes that missed nothing, we rose. The gavel struck, and the case began. Harlan Vart. Harlan petitioned to contest trust. Elise's lawyer started with trembling confidence. He painted me as secretive, manipulative, hoarding millions while my daughter drowned in debt. He created a trust, the lawyer said, designed to lock out his own flesh and blood. We argue coercion, we argue concealment, we argue betrayal of family obligations. Betrayal. The word landed like a stone. My chest ached. How quickly the mirror turned. Then Graham stood, calm, measured. Your Honor, what you will hear today is not about concealment, but about greed. Not about coercion, but about choice. We have every document, every receipt, every recording to show this trust is valid, airtight, and necessary, because the very person contesting it attempted to forge her father's name to steal from him. A ripple went through the room. Elise's shoulders stiffened. The judge leaned forward. We shall see the evidence. One by one, Graham laid it out. The forged $50,000 appraisal letter. The photographs Elise had taken of my bank slips. The December 13th recording where Marcus urged forgery and Elise hesitated but did not refuse. Affidavits from Sotheby's confirming auction sales. Bank confirmations of wire transfers. A locksmith's receipt dated December 7th. Layer after layer, he built a fortress of proof around me, each stone heavier than the last. Elise tried to fight. When her lawyer cross-examined me, she glared as though her eyes could set fire. Mr. Harlan, the lawyer pressed, is it true you hid your identity as Seta Corvus assistant for decades, even from your own children? Yes, I answered, steady. And by doing so, you deprived your daughter of knowing the financial security you secretly enjoyed. No, I said. I deprived her of nothing. I provided a home. I paid every bill. What she wanted wasn't SIP security. She wanted control. The lawyer tried again. And isn't it true you planted documents deliberately to entrap her? I met the Judge Sepp's gaze. I gave her opportunities to choose honesty. She chose theft. Elise flinched as if I had struck her. Then came the hardest moment. Elise took the stand. Her voice shook as she spoke of Marcus, of debt, of desperation. I was drowning, she said, tears brimming. I wasn't myself, Marcus pushed. I thought maybe if Dad just shared, if he just trusted me, things would have been different. Besaid she says that his Petriv such to... Her eyes finally met mine. For a flicker I saw the child in the yellow dress again, the one who once thought I mixed magic into paint. But the judge was unmoved. When Graham cross-examined her, his questions were scalpels. Miss Harlan, did you or did you not remove a letter from your father Sepp's home without permission? Her lips trembled. Yes. Did you or did you not take photographs of confidential bank slips? Yes. Did you or did you not discuss forging his signature with your husband on December 16th? Tears spilled. Yes. Then tell this court, Miss Harlan, where exactly is the coercion? Her silence filled the room louder than any confession. Marcus was subpoenaed to testify, but never appeared. Cowardice kept him hidden. The judge noted the absence with thinly veiled disdain. Elise sat alone at her table, her lawyer whispering frantically, but nothing could undo what she had admitted under oath. By late afternoon, the ruling came. The Judge Sepp's voice was firm, unshaking. This court finds no merit in the petitioner Sepp's claims. The trust established by Victor Harlan stands as written. All assets remain his Zed. The petitioner Sips's actions constitute misconduct, not the respondent Sips's case dismissed. The gavel struck. Sharp, final. Elise reached across the empty table, hand searching for Marcus's that wasn't there. Her fingers grasped air, her face crumpled, pale and hollow. Silence settled, harsher than any punishment. Daniel sat behind me, his eyes wet, his jaw clenched. For the first time in weeks, he placed his hand on my shoulder. That small weight steadied me more than the judge's ruling. As we left the courthouse, the wind howled down Washington Street, rattling flags against their poles. Elise remained inside, shoulders slumped, staring at the table where her future had collapsed. I walked into the cold with Anna on one side, Daniel on the other, and Graham carrying the binders like a priest with scripture. Justice hadn't brought joy, but it had brought truth, and truth, like winter in Chicago, strips everything bare. The day after the ruling, I returned to the garage before dawn. The city was still dark, snow piled at the curbs, the world muffled by winter's hand. Inside, the fluorescent light hummed against concrete walls, illuminating the silence that had carried me through grief, betrayal, and justice. The unfinished canvas stood on the easel, just as it had for months, The man half in shadow, half in light. His face was mine. His eyes were unfinished, blank, waiting for me to decide whether they would reflect despair or redemption. I sat before it with a brush trembling in my hand. For a long time I didn't move. I thought of Elise sitting hollow in that courtroom, her hand reaching for Marcus only to find empty air. I thought of Daniel, his palm on my shoulder, the first gesture of trust I'd felt from him in years. I thought of my wife, whose absence had driven me to paint in the first place. Anna brought coffee in a chipped mug, setting it beside me without a word. She stood for a while, arms folded, eyes on the canvas. Finally she said, "It's Sep's time, Victor. Sep's been waiting long enough." I nodded. The first stroke was black, cutting across the shadow side of the face. Heavy, deliberate, a weight carried into pigment. The second stroke was white, blending into the light, soft but unyielding. With each line I felt the burden of years lifting. Stroke by stroke the man on the canvas came alive. Shadow and light didn't fight. They belonged to each other. Hours passed. When I stepped back, sweat beading my forehead despite the cold, the painting was whole. The man stared back at me, one half cloaked in darkness, the other radiant in light. His eyes were clear now, not of despair, but of truth. For the first time, I signed it. Not just Corvus, not just Victor, but both names, side by side, Victor Harlan. I whispered to the canvas, to myself, to the ghosts that had kept me company all these years. You didn't lose me, you gave me away. The words settled in the room, heavier than paint, softer than grief. Later that evening, Daniel came into the garage. He stopped at the doorway, his breath catching. "It's finished," he said softly. I nodded. He stepped closer, eyes scanning every detail. "It Sep's you," he murmured. "Both of you. Dad, Corvus." I turned to him. "Do you understand now why I hid it?" He hesitated, then nodded. "Because you wanted me to know you as a father first." "Yes," I said. My voice cracked. "I didn't want to drown you in the weight of a name. I wanted you to see me in oil and grease. Not just oil paint, but I also wanted you to know me now, the whole of me." Daniel swallowed, then surprised me. He reached for the brush, still wet with paint, and dipped it in white. Carefully, nervously, he added a single stroke of light across the canvas, blending into what I had finished. "There," he whispered. "Now I set him part of it too." Tears blurred my vision. I placed a hand on his shoulder. "Always, son. Always." The garage felt lighter then, as if the furnace had exhaled relief. For the first time in years, I felt no need to hide canvases, no urge to tape keys beneath drawers or slip receipts into shadows. The truth was out, the legacy secured, the lies burned away. That night, I wrapped the finished canvas in craft paper and leaned it gently against the wall, not hidden, not locked, just waiting for the world when the time was right. I sat at the workbench with Anna and Daniel, drinking coffee gone lukewarm. We spoke quietly about the trial, about Elise, about what comes next. "Will she come back?" Daniel asked. I shook my head slowly. "Not soon, maybe not ever, but if she does, she shall find no locks left to pick. Only truth, and truth will either set her free or crush her." Silence settled between us. But it was not the silence of betrayal. It was the silence of closure. Later, when the house slept, I returned to the garage one last time. I turned off the light and stood in the doorway, watching the outline of the wrapped canvas in the moonlight filtering through frosted glass. The man, half in shadow, half in light, was no longer unfinished. Neither was I. For the first time since my wife's death, I felt whole. February thawed the edges of Chicago's winter, slush pooling in gutters, icicles snapping from rooftops. Life crept back into motion, but in my house the air was different. Lighter, freer. For weeks I had lived in silence, painting without fear of discovery, no longer hiding auction slips or tucking receipts into drawers. The canvas I'd finished sat unwrapped against the wall, its presence both proud and patient. Then one morning it happened. Daniel burst into the garage, holding a magazine rolled under his arm. His eyes were wide, his breath quick. "Dad," he said, You need to see this. He unrolled the glossy issue of American Art Today. Across the cover, in bold serif letters, read The Mystery of Corvus, finally unveiled. My chest tightened. Daniel flipped to the feature. There it was, a full-page spread. Photographs of my canvases, Lake Michigan at dawn, untitled shadows, the half-light portrait I had just finished. And beneath them, a line that made my breath stop. After years of anonymity, sources confirm that Corvus is none other than Chicago mechanic and painter Victor Harlan. My name, in print. My secret finally unmasked. Anna arrived minutes later, already holding her own copy. It seps everywhere, she said, her voice a mix of awe and inevitability. The Tribune, the Post, even online forums. They know, Victor, the world knows. For years I had braced for this. For decades I believed revelation would ruin me, strip away the privacy that had kept me sane. But standing there with my sister and my son, I felt something else entirely: relief. The phone rang endlessly that week. Galleries called, journalists emailed, collectors begged for interviews, photographs, exclusive rights. Graham's office fielded half of it, pushing back, setting boundaries. One evening, Daniel sat across from me at the dinner table, magazine open between us. He traced the photo of my painting with his finger. You stirred not just my dad anymore, he whispered. You stirred history. People are going to study you, write about you, remember you. I shook my head. I don't want to be history, son. I just want to be remembered by you. He looked up, eyes bright. You will, always. Meanwhile, Elise's absence grew louder. She had moved out of state, a rumor confirmed by Anna, who still heard whispers through family friends. Somewhere down south, in a rented apartment with peeling walls, my daughter lived a quieter life now, disgraced, alone. Every attempt she'd made to twist my name had only unraveled her own. I thought often about calling her, about telling her the magazine had outed me, that the fortune she once mocked now filled headlines. But I never picked up the phone. Some truths have to find their own way to reach you. Daniel, however, wore the story like armor. He framed the article in a black wooden frame, hung it on the living room wall above the mantel. When Anna visited, she'd smile at it, proud. I pretended to scowl. Don't hang that where the neighbors can see, but secretly I let it stay. One night, after Graham stopped by to discuss legal protections for my newfound notoriety, Anna lingered behind. She poured us both a glass of wine, her eyes tracing the framed article on the wall. You stir free now, she said. I frowned. Free? Yes. Free from hiding. Free from illicit schemes. Free from the fear that your art was only valuable in shadows. It belongs to the world now, and so do you. Her words sank deep. I hadn't realized how heavy the secrecy had been until it was gone. Later in the garage, I looked at the finished canvas, the man half in shadow, half in light. For years, I thought it was me alone, but now I understood it was all of us. The light and shadow of family, of betrayal, of forgiveness half granted, half withheld. I dipped a brush in white paint and signed the back of the canvas, smaller this time, Corvus Unmasked. The next day, I carried it to the living room and leaned it beneath the framed article. Daniel looked at it, then at me, and nodded. No words needed, because in that moment, I wasn't just Victor. I wasn't just Corvus. I was both, and the world finally knew. March arrived with a thin warmth, the kind that tricks you into believing spring has come while snow still lurks in alley shadows. Chicago thawed, puddles collecting sunlight in the gutters, and my name, Corvus Unmasked, still lingered in headlines. Collectors wrote letters, galleries begged, and offers stacked in Graham's inbox like dominoes. But I wasn't interested in exhibitions or interviews. I was interested in one last painting. In the garage, the easel stood ready, a fresh canvas stretched tight. This time there was no unfinished ghost staring at me. This time the vision was clear before I even picked up a brush. A woman walking away down a narrow street, her figure wrapped in light, her shadow stretching long behind her. Her face was indistinct, blurred by motion. Was it Elise? Was it my wife? Was it every loss I had carried and survived? Maybe it was all of them. Maybe it was simply what it meant to let go. I worked for weeks. Layer by layer, stroke by stroke, the figure took shape. Sometimes Daniel sat in the corner, studying quietly, as though afraid to interrupt. Sometimes Anna brought coffee and leaned against the workbench, eyes soft with understanding. When the final stroke was laid, a soft streak of white across the horizon, light spilling into absence, I stepped back and knew it was done. I signed it simply Corvus. Not hidden, not doubled with Victor, just Corvus, because the world had already claimed the name and I had stopped running from it. The gallery showing was scheduled for April 3rd, a Friday evening in River North. The space glowed with halogen lights, walls washed in white. People filed in, critics with pens poised, collectors with checkbooks burning in their pockets, strangers murmuring as though standing in a chapel. The painting hung at the far end of the gallery. The woman walking away. When the crowd finally hushed, the bidding began. Numbers rose quickly, each higher than the last. 200,000, 400, 800. By the end, the hammer struck at $1.2 million. The room erupted in applause. I stood quietly at the back, hands folded, watching as the painting was claimed. Not because of the money. Money was just noise now, but because everyone who saw it knew what it meant. They didn't need a title card to understand. They knew who she was. They knew she had walked away. And they knew I had let her. Reporters pressed for a statement, cameras flashing. "What does the painting mean?" one asked. I smiled faintly. "It means the same thing all paintings mean, whatever you see when you stand in front of it." Later, when the gallery emptied and only echoes remained, Daniel came to my side. It was about her, wasn't it? About Elise. I looked at him, my son, taller now than I remembered, the weight of a man beginning to settle into his frame. It was about all of them. About everyone I said loved and lost. About how sometimes the only thing left to do is let them walk away. He nodded, eyes glistening. "Then it sets not really an ending." "No," I said quietly. "It sets a beginning for both of us." As we left the gallery, I turned back once. The painting hung against the white wall. The woman's figure fading into the horizon. It no longer belonged to me. It belonged to whoever saw themselves in her shadow. The irony wasn't set bitter. It was sharp, poetic. Elise had mocked my art as worthless, called my canvases firewood. She had tried to steal scraps she thought might cover a mortgage. And now, a single canvas of her absence had sold for more than she and Marcus ever dreamed of holding in their hands. That was the last irony. Revenge had never been about cruelty. It had been about truth painted stroke by stroke, until even betrayal had to admit its own reflection. I walked into the Chicago night, Daniel at my side, the city lights glimmering on wet pavement. For the first time in decades, I felt no shadows trailing me. Only light,